welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I will show you how to make the corner-to-corner guest throw. This throw is very luxurious, and the minute you're able to put it onto your guest bed and they can wrap up in something that you've made, they are going to be your friend for life. This project uses a yarn called Dreamy from Red Heart Yarns. It is sort of a brushed acrylic yarn, and it is so soft and cozy and comes in such beautiful colors. I just can't even express how warm and cozy the blanket's going to be. It is a size 4 weight yarn, but it's on the thicker side of 4 weight, and we will use an eye hook for this pattern. Speaking of the pattern, it is a free pattern available at redheart.com. I'll put a link to the pattern in the video description box right down there below. And while you're down there, smash that like button, as my kids say, to let people know you enjoyed this video. Why don't you go ahead, grab some yarn and a hook, and let me show you the basics of how to do the corner to corner for the body of this throw, and then we'll jump into the really beautiful edging. This throw has us begin with a chain 6, so I will start off with a slip knot on my hook and then chain 6 stitches. I am using a basic worsted weight yarn for the demonstration so you can better see the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to do one more. Remember, you never count the loop on your hook. Once you've chained 6, you will do a double crochet in the 4th chain from hook. So you yarn over your hook, skip 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th one, you will work a double crochet. Then you do a double crochet in the next 2 chains. Once you've completed all 3 double crochet, we will turn our work. Before I turn my work, I want to go ahead and I'm going to grab a stitch marker and just place it on this side of the square I just made. The reason I add a stitch marker is because here at the start of the corner to corner, as you're turning your work back and forth, it's really easy to lose track of where you are. So if you have a stitch marker in place, you can always remember that when we're on this side, we are on the row 1 side, which would be a wrong side row. So as I turn my work here, I'm on the right side and I will chain 6. I will do a double crochet in the 4th chain from hook. And in the next 2 chains. Once you've completed this square right here, we are then going to jump all the way over here to where these skipped stitches are. We're going to slip stitch into those skipped stitches, and then we will chain 3, and then place 3 double crochets all into this big space. You can see here we now have 2 squares where we used to only have 1. You now will turn your work. Row 3, we begin with the chain 6. Just like before, we are going to double crochet in the 4th chain from hook and in the next 2 chains. Then we will jump all the way over here to where this chain 3 is. We will join with a slip stitch into that chain 3 space, and then we chain 3, and then work 3 double crochets into that same space. Once you've completed those double crochets, we will skip over to the chains on the next square and do a slip stitch, chain 3, and then work 3 double crochets into this space. You can see now I have 3 squares where before I only had 2. Every time we turn our work and begin with that chain 6, we are increasing the number of squares we have on our blanket by 1. We are working on the diagonal for this blanket. That's why it's called corner to corner. So as I turn my work for row 4, I am doing a repeat of row 3, which is chain 6, double crochet in the 4th chain from hook, and in the next 2 chains, skip all the way over to where the chain 3 is from this square here, join with a slip stitch, and then chain 3 and continue on, working 3 double crochets into that same chain 3 space. Go to the next square, join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and then 3 double crochet in that chain 3 space. Oops, I grabbed some extra yarn there. I don't want to do that. Go to the last chain 3, join with a slip stitch, chain 3, and then 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. As I mentioned, when we started with the chain 6 and we worked this square, we now have 1 extra square than we did in the previous section. You continue with row 3 until you have 45 blocks. That'll be 45 rows. Once we get to row 46, we are then going to change the way we construct these blocks, so that way we change the direction of our blanket. Okay, so obviously I'm not on row 46, I'm on row 6, but we can follow along with the instructions and show on this small little sample. I've also changed colors so you can better see how these stitches are going to be worked as opposed to the ones that were in yellow. Row 46 has us begin with a chain 6. We will double crochet in the 4th chain from hook, just like we've been doing all along, and in the next 2 chains. Go ahead, jump over here to where the chains section is, do a slip stitch, chain 3, and then work your 3 double crochets. We're going to do this all the way down to the last square or the last block. I am on the block right before the last block, finishing up my 3 double crochets. And before we had jumped over here to this next chain 3 section, this chain 3 space, and joined with a slip stitch, and then made another block. This time, I do not want you to make another block. We don't want this to get any wider. We did our increase at this edge to maintain the length here, but we've reached the width we want here. So now we're just going to continue to build the blanket this way. And we will do that by increasing at this edge and then decreasing at this edge, simply by not working a block into that section. So far, so good, right? The shaping will make more sense as we carry on, so stick with me here. On row 47, we turn our work and we want to slip stitch over to this chain 3 space because we're not changing colors. We want to keep this yarn that we're using and slip stitch over to this chain 3 space. So if you just go into the top of each one of these stitches and work slip stitches over to that chain 3 space. When you get there to the space, you will slip stitch into that space and then proceed with creating a block. So I chain 3, place 3 double crochets into that same chain 3 space, and then so on and so forth. I'm going to do this all the way over to the last block. I am finishing up the block before my last blocks. This is where I was last time. And what makes this row different than the previous is that we are going to complete our last block on this final one. We aren't just going to join with the slip stitch. We're going to go ahead and work a block. And so this will keep the number of blocks on our row the same as the previous row. Okay, so the previous row we still had, for this example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. And on this row we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. Can you see how that happens? See how the blanket or my little swatch is starting to work its way this way? Now that we've created this shape where we've increased to a point and now we're just maintaining that width, we are going to repeat the last 2 rows 4 times and then repeat row 46 once. That's going to give us a little bit of body between our increase section and our decrease section. Once you've completed row 46 once, you then will begin decreasing all of the blocks one by one until you get down to the opposite corner. Get it? Corner to corner. So let's go ahead and decrease down now. Once again, I'm working on a smaller swatch, so I'm not going to have as many rows as you will have, but I'm at the point in the pattern where it's time to turn, and this would be like I'm working a row 57. I have changed colors once again so you can better see the stitches I'm creating in this section. So when I turn my work, just like before, we're supposed to slip stitch up to this chain 3 space. Now remember, my slip stitches are going to show because I have a different color, but if you're using the same color, your slip stitches will not show. Once you get up to the chain 3 space, you will simply slip stitch into that chain 3 space and then work your blocks just like you've been doing all along by working the chain 3 and then 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. Go to the next block and do the same thing. We're going to do this all the way to the last block. I am to the block just before my last block. This is where I brought you back the last couple times as well. And I'm finishing this one up into the chain 3 space. And just like before, into this chain 3 space of the last block, I'm going to join with the slip stitch, but I'm not going to continue. I'm going to leave that. So at this point, what I've done is I've slipped over to start my blocks right here, which means I have decreased my blocks by 1. Before I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Simply by slipping over, I no longer have increased out here. And by not finishing this up here, I'm not increasing out here. Can you see how that's working up? So this would be just like row 57. You repeat row 57 until you get down to 2 blocks. Very simple. You'll slip stitch up to the chain 3 space, work your blocks to the last block, and then join with the slip stitch. And you'll do that till you get down to 2 blocks. Once you get down to 2 blocks, we finish it up. Let's see how that looks. I am down to just 2 blocks and I'm ready to work row 100. So I would turn my work, slip stitch over to that last chain 3 space over here, just like I've been doing all along. I will chain 3, work this block, and then slip stitch to this chain 3, just like I've been doing all along. Now I can go ahead and fasten off. So I like to chain 1 and then I cut my yarn, leaving at least 4 to 6 inches. You want to make sure you have enough tail to weave in securely because you don't want your piece falling apart, okay? So always give yourself a little bit extra tail. It's always better to have more tail than not enough. Once you've cut your yarn, go ahead and give that a pull. And your blanket should look a little something like this. Obviously, it'll be much larger, but you can see how this is worked up. We increased to the point that we wanted it width-wise. Then we went straight up, maintaining the same number of squares, and then we decreased down to the opposite corner. That's why it's called corner to corner. The corner to corner technique is a favorite amongst crocheters. You can take the information you've learned in this video and create beautiful blankets. You can even change up this pattern and instead of using the solid colors of Dreamy, use Dreamy stripes and get something completely different. It'll look like you have taken a lot of time to change colors throughout your project, but it's really the yarn that has done all the work for you. Once you've completed the blanket, it's time to work on the border, and it's really not that difficult. You're going to single crochet around the entire blanket, and lucky for you, the designer has given you specific instructions on where you're supposed to place each single crochet around the blanket. I will tell you that on each side of the blanket, you should have a stitch multiple of 8 plus 5, including 1 stitch at each corner. You'll notice once you get all of the single crochets completed on the first round of the border, you have 141 single crochets along each of the long edges and 109 single crochets along each of the short edges, plus 1 stitch at each corner. You need that stitch multiple in order for the rest of the border instructions to work out. The stitch pattern that we're going to be looking at today uses the 8 stitches as the multiple plus 5 in order to go around the entire blanket. The reason I'm saying this is if you're working along with the instructions, placing the stitches where you think they're supposed to be placed, but you're coming up 1 or 2 stitches short or 1 or 2 stitches too many, it doesn't really matter where you're placing those single crochets at the end of the day. It matters more that you have the right stitch count. So don't rip out your entire work and think, oh, I have to redo this whole side to get the right stitch count. Just fudge it a little bit. Go ahead and add a stitch here or delete a stitch there to make sure you get to the correct stitch counts. Once you have those correct stitch counts, you're ready to move on to round 2 of the border, which is where it really gets interesting. Now, this border has a lot of words, and you guys know I like a lot of words, but I also find them very difficult to follow along with. So what I want to do is I want to take a look at the actual sample blanket and talk through the border instructions and show you how it looks on the sample blanket. That way we're sure to see all of the stitches as they're supposed to be made and where they're supposed to be made. So let's go ahead and take a look at this sample border and talk through it. All right, so let's get started. Once you've worked your full round of single crochets, you actually end at this point right here. I've placed a marker here to indicate like that's where the start of my round is. So this is where we're gonna go. We will slip stitch over 3 single crochets. In the next single crochet, we are gonna work a beginning shell. I like to slip stitch in that next single crochet, but you don't have to. It's not written in the instructions. You will chain 4, and then you will do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then you will chain 1, skip 3 single crochets. Okay, so we're right here. We're just going to skip 3 single crochets and place a single crochet in the next stitch. Then we skip 3 single crochets, chain 1, and then let's see here, then we will shell in the next stitch. So in the next stitch here, we do a double, chain 1, double, chain 1, double, chain 1, double. Do you want me to go through that one more time? So what we did after we did our single, we did a chain 1, skip 3, and then in the next one, we do a shell, a double, chain 1, double, chain 1, double, chain 1, double. So that is our shell. Now it says that we're supposed to repeat everything that's within those brackets 16 times. So let's go ahead and count on our sample 16 times. I ended right here. And so 16 times, so the bracket, let's see, it was the chain 1, skip 3, single, chain 1, skip 3, shell. So every time we come to the shell, that'll be the end of one. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is the 16th. And you'll notice as you're going along here that we're just prepping this row with shells and then a single, shells and then a single. So when you get to the end of the 16th one, we are right here, and that's where we will pick up the instructions. It says we will chain one, so there is our chain one. And we will skip the next 3 single crochet. So 1, 2, 3. And then I got to find my place again in the written words. Single crochet in the next single crochet. Skip the next 2 single, skip 2. And then chain 1, here's a chain 1. And then do a shell in this corner. So this is the corner, and we do a shell right here. So double chain 1, double chain 1, double chain 1, double. So that's our shell right there in the corner, okay? Then we chain 1, skip 2. You guys working here? So we chained 1 and we skipped 2. Single crochet in the next single crochet. Skip 3 single crochet, 1, 2, 3. And then we chain 1 and then do a shell in the next single crochet. We then repeat the brackets again 12 times. So let's see, it doesn't say 12 times more, so I'm going to guess that this was once. So let's do 12 times. So I'm going to say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I was wrong. They didn't count that first one. So this would be 12. So this is 12. So we did that first one past the corner and then 12 more. Okay. So now we're at the other corner. Now we're at this corner over here. So we finished this shell. This would have been the end of the bracket. And once again, we would chain 1, skip 3, single, skip 2, chain 1, shell, chain 1, skip 2, single, skip 3, chain 1, shell, so on and so forth. So on this long edge, it will look just like the opposite long edge. Notice every time we do our repeat, that's our single crochet and then our shell, single crochet and then our shell. So once we have that worked all the way around, you'll finish off at the very end of the round. So let's jump to that part. So at the very end of the round, you would do your shell, chain 1, skip 2, and then single crochet right here into that starting point. That's actually where you did your join at the start of the round 1. And then you would chain 1 and join right here into the third chain of that initial 4 chains that we did, and that would finish your first round, okay? Pretty simple. The thing here is that as long as you have set it up now where you have your shells, a single, shells, single, shells, so on and so forth, and you're following along with the instructions from here on out, you should be in good shape. The instructions are written out pretty well as far as where you're supposed to put your stitches and so on and so forth. But as we take a look here, the one thing I do want to point out, I think it's on round 4 here. You are going to do this stitch right here. Okay, let me make sure this is round 4. It's a double crochet 2 together. And the reason I want to point this out is I want you to see where the placement of that double crochet 2 together is. This is a stitch on top of that single crochet. It's a double crochet on top of that single. And then on round 4, you actually do a double crochet 2 together on either side of that double crochet. And so that's what brings this in order to create this really cool look. This border really is super easy. Just take your time, read through the instructions, and place the stitches where they're supposed to be placed. There's no big trick stitches or anything that's supposed to be nefarious in there. It's pretty straightforward. Single crochets, doubles, and chain 1s. The one exception there is that double crochet 2 together that I just showed you. I really feel like you can work your way through this stitch pattern. I do want to tell you that this particular border is one of my favorites, and I know that it is also in a book by Edie Eckman that I will link to in the video description box of this video because it has a great chart in there. And so for those of you who are more visual learners, you might find that using the chart for this stitch pattern will be more helpful than just looking at the word. So I'll make sure that I put a link to that book in the video description box below. So that way, if those of you who maybe have the book, you can look it up, or if you want to buy the book and check it out, you can. I would show you here on video, but it's copyrighted, so I can't do that. But I did want to share that little tidbit with you. Let's see here. The only other thing I want to make sure I mention is that this final picot bit here, they are very, very simple to make, and the picots are just created by working a chain 3 and then slip stitching into that same space, and so you get this really cute picot look. This blanket is a wonderful throw to include in your guest room. And if you really love the guest, you'll offer it to them as a parting gift. That way they can remember the wonderful time they had with you while they are at their own home. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful as you tackle this corner to corner guest throw. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comment section below this video. Or if you make this pattern, please hashtag me, Marley Bird, on social media, and I'll make sure to come and smash your like button. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the channel. If you want more videos just like that one, check out some of these other videos that I've already handpicked for you. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that way you're up to date whenever I release a new video. And don't forget, smash that like button, as my kids say. Bye guys.